Hey everybody, welcome to Cracking Cyber. This is the part 3 episode. I've released part 1 and 2 so far, and this is the third one, and it appears to me that, it has gotten some views. People started liking it, and I saw some comments in there as well, so it has given me that encouragement to move forward with this project, so I really appreciate it. Like I said before, that I'm prepping for the upcoming test. I have not set up a date for that yet, but just going through some question and answer, and I felt like, well, when I'm doing that, why don't I just put it all together, whatever I'm doing, and then you can take an advantage of it as well, because this particular piece, you can just watch it while you're going somewhere in your mobile, or whenever you have free time. So it's just a handy thing. So and I truly appreciate your dedication and your inspiration that is providing me some opportunity to move forward with it. So all right, let's move on to the question here. And the first question is about risk assessment. During a risk assessment for a new mobile application, management asks for a qualitative risk analysis instead of a quantitative one. Which one of the following would best describe a qualitative risk analysis? Now, in order to answer this question, right, you might already know the answer to it. In order to respond to this, what we really have to know is what is qualitative risk versus what is quantitative risk, right? Quantitative, there is some number associated with it, right? On the qualitative, there is no numbers associated with it, right? So what's the quality looks like? Is it high quality? Is it low quality? What is the quality, right? So that's what the base is all about, right? So it's when it's asking for the qualitative. Let's take a look at some of the choices out here. So first one is estimating the potential dollar loss of each identified risk. Of course, when you're computing the dollar loss, you're going to hit by some numbers there. Like you can say like $100,000 loss, right? So 100,000 is a number, and that's more into the quantitative, not qualitative. So we're going to eliminate that. B is about ranking risk as high, medium, or low based on impact and likelihood. This seems to be the right answer. Just leave it there for now. C is about calculating annualized loss expectancy, or ALE, for each risk. Of course, on ALE also you're going to get some kind of dollar value in there whenever you're calculating that loss. So there's not going to be the right answer based on what the question is asking for. And the last one is using actuarial using actuarial okay. And then the last one is about using actual models to assign financial values to risk, right? So when you're assigning the financial value, of course, there's some dollar amount associated with it. So that's also not the right answer. So the B is the right answer, which is ranking risk as high, medium, or low based on the impact and likelihood. Let's move on to the next one. The next one talks about the global financial. Well, let's talk about the next one here. A global financial institution is expanding into new markets. Okay. During the board meeting, directors express concern that IT risks are being reported with too much technical detail, making it difficult for them to understand the business impact. As the risk professional, what is the best course of action? So there is an expansion that's going on. They're trying to talk about the risk in a technical term where it's having very hard time for other people to understand it, right? So the business language is not there, I would say. Now, in this particular case, what would be the right answer? Let's take a look at the choices that we have out here. A is about translating IT risk into business terms such as financial, reputational, and or operational impact. B is about providing the board with detailed IT risk registers so they can see all risks. So it's not going to happen because, you know, it's almost like if you do that, they're going to kick you out no matter what. The third thing is about train the board on technical IT concept to improve their understanding. That's not going to happen either. I mean, they're not going to get into your training to understand the IT concept. And the reason they're not in IT is because of that, right? If you're in IT, you'll understand the IT concept, right? So the other thing is about report only those IT risks that exceed the organizational risk appetite. That's not possible either because you want to make sure that you are letting them know each and everything that's happening in there, right? So, of course, the best choice here is, I believe, A, right? The translate IT risk into some language, which is English, or if you're talking some other languages, whatever the language that you can utilize, that's going to align with the strategy and decision making, right? So this is an easy answer, actually, if you look at it, but just the question is a little longer there. All right. So let's move on to the next one. During a quarterly risk review, management asks what should be included in the risk register to make it a reliable decision-making tool. This particular question is about risk register, right? I'm pretty sure everybody knows what the risk register is here, right? So, I'll tell you a little bit about risk register. It's a tool. Risk register is a tool. You can create that risk register in an Excel if you wanted to, right? To track the potential risk that you have seen, and then you're going to manage that risk as well, right? And there are a few things that needs to be in there. So depending on the organization, sometimes you get the template off of it. Sometimes you have to, build something from the scratch. And if you go on the internet and look at it, how others have done it, you're gonna find tons of information in there, right? So not too concerned about it. But most of the time, what I've seen is like there's always some kind of template as a risk register template is already there. All right, so let's take a look at the choices that you have up here. So the choices that we have out here, one is about audit findings, control deficiencies, and regulatory gaps. Do you really want to include that in risk register? Audit findings, control deficiencies, and regulatory gaps? I don't think so. So even though I'm just saying that even you want to include control deficiencies and regulatory gaps in the risk register, which is never going to happen, if you realize the audit finding is not going to be there, then, of course, other two will not match there, right? So it's not possible. The second one they talked about is the identified risks, their likelihood and impact, owners, and response plans. This looks more promising to me, that whatever it is that you have found, you want to put that in there, right? Of course, when we talk about the risk, we want to talk about the likelihood and its impact, and who the risk belongs to, who's the owner for that, and what kind of plans that you have in order to respond to that particular risk, right? So this looks more promising. Let's take a look at other two as well. Industry threat intelligence and emerging technologies. What is that? What does that got to do with risk register, right? I don't think you want to put that either. The next one is about key performance indicator with KPIs for IT operation. the KPI is a metric. I mean, you're not going to put any kind of metric in the risk register. So the right answer, I believe, in this one is B, as a baker. All right, let's move on to the next question here. And the next question is about a large multinational company wants to predict potential IT risk events before they occur, which is a good thing. Management asks you to define metrics that provide early warning signs. Which of the following is the best approach? So we have to identify the early sign warning signals. Number A talks about use historical incident reports to analyze past failures. Okay, going back to the historical record to analyze the failures, do you think that's the right approach? I don't think so. So whenever you're going to the history and try to find something out from it, this is more like the trend analysis. It's a trending thing that you do, right? B, establishing key risk indicators, KRIs, tied to risk thresholds. This looks like the right choice, but let's read on other two as well. Conduct annual internal audits. And the audits needs to be in a periodic fashion, and the audit will give you the retrospective of what happened there, right? But it's not an early sign to define the metrics. And then the last one is about tracking IT performance metrics, such as uptime and server utilization, right? It does what it does is it measures some kind of like the utilize or operational efficiency, right? It does not talk about the risk exposure. So I believe in this one, the right answer would be the establishment of key risk indicators, KRIs, tied to risk threshold is the right answer, as it helps to provide early warning signals of potential risk events. And when that happens, you take some proactive measures to combat that, right? So, all right. Let's move on to the next one here. So the next one talks about the healthcare organization. A healthcare organization is evaluating whether to implement a new access control system to reduce the risk of unauthorized patient data access. The system is expensive, and the management wants to know if the benefits outweigh the cost. Which of the following is the best approach? So you have to understand what's happening here is there's some level of cost that's associated with that, but the benefit is more than the cost, the initial cost, right? So let's take a look at it. So we're talking about benefit, we're talking about cost here. So let's put that key word together there. So A is about conducting a A is about conducting a cost-benefit analysis, comparing mitigation cost with the risk reduction. Let's move on to others as well. Calculate the annualized loss expectancy, or ALE, to all risks in the organization. Do you think this is the right answer? B. We talk about qualitative and quantitative risk, but this one looks more like a quantitative risk to me. I don't know if it helps in evaluating the cost control versus what the benefit is, so I don't think that's the right one. Benchmark against other hospital security investment. Hospital A is doing this. I'm going to do the same thing. It gives you some kind of contextual idea of what hospital A is doing, but for you to make that decision, that particular benchmark is not going to be enough. So I don't think you want to choose option C there. Now, option D is about implementing the system immediately without financial analysis to reduce risk. You are ignoring the costs associated with that, which is not going to be practical because you have not done any kind of analysis, financial analysis, right? So I don't think it's practical, as well as from the business standpoint, it's that strategic as well. So looking at everything, it looks like A is the right choice here. Conducting cost-benefit analysis, it compares the cost of whatever the controls that you're thinking about implementing, right, against the benefit of risk reduction, right? So, for instance, there could be a loss, right? There could be fines. There could be some kind of like reputational impact, right? So those are the things that are against it. Now, when you provide that analysis, when you compare and then provide that analysis, then now the management has more decision-making power. They're informed, so what we call is like informed financial decision about risk mitigation, and this is what they're looking for in this scenario here. All right, so here's another one. Project manager reports that after implementing all planned controls, the residual risk for a critical IT project remains above the organizational risk tolerance. What is the most appropriate next step? The choices we have: A is about accepting the risk and continue the project. B is transferring the risk through insurance and outsourcing. C is closing the risk register since controls are implemented. And finally, the D is escalating the risk to senior management for review and decision. So the scenario here, so first you have to understand what the risk tolerance is. Every company that you go and work with, they have some level of tolerance. They have a ceiling. If you break that ceiling, it's not going to be good. You cannot go beyond what the parameter is set through, right? So that's your tolerance level. We can tolerate this much, but we cannot beyond that, right? So you do not want to go above that. Now, what it's asking for is like you have implemented the controls, but at the same time, there is still a risk, residual risk that remains, which is above your risk tolerance, right? Now, accepting the risk and continue the project, that's not going to happen is because there is a tolerance level. You have exceeded that. You cannot go with it. Transfer the risk through insurance or outsourcing. It could be possible, but at the same time, right, you cannot make that decision to transfer the risk to insurance or outsourcing because your tolerance level has exceeded. Close the risk register since control. So it has nothing to do with it because, in risk register, all you're doing is like just, writing out all the risk and all those other things that are out there. Now, on this D part here, escalate risk to senior management review and decision. This looks more promising to me is because when the residual risk, as stated in the question, exceed organizational risk tolerance, right, it has to be escalated, right, to the senior management so that they have the power to make sure what's next for them to do. Maybe they will say like, okay, yeah, I mean, we can get the ceiling to go a little higher, meaning like, whatever the risk that we saw, we be able to combat that, right? So they can do that. They can say that, okay, no, we can take it and we can go from there, right? They will accept the risk at the higher level, right? So they are the decision maker. They can say like, no, we probably want to have more control in there. That control was not the part of it before, right? And then they can also make some decisions saying that, well, transfer it to the third party, and you can transfer it. So the right answer would be D here, to escalate the risk to senior management for review and decision. All right, let's move on to the next question here. And the next question talks about the multinational organization that identifies multiple IT risks across the global operation. Management wants to prioritize risks for mitigation, considering both likelihood and potential business impact. Which of the following is the best approach? Now, in order for us to answer this, what needs to happen is we have to understand each and every thing that's going on in here, right? So the first thing is about prioritizing risk based solely on financial impact. So what's doing it, it's trying to ignore the likelihood of risk, and it could misprioritize risks. It's not what the question is asking for. B is about using a risk matrix combining likelihood and impact to rank risk. Let's leave that for now. This looks like the right answer, but let's go through other two choices as well. So the C is about addressing risk in the order they were identified and risk registered. This is not the risk-based. And focus only on risk identified by the department. When you do that, you're not going enterprise-wise. You're just focusing on one small IT department. I mean, not the IT department, but any kind of department, whatever it is, right? So this is not going to happen because you're talking about the global operation here. So to me, it seems B is the right choice here, using a risk matrix, combining likelihood and impact to rank risk is the right choice here. Let's move on to the next one here. A company has identified a high risk of insider data theft in its financial system. Something's happening within inside. Management wants to reduce the likelihood of this risk. So it's insider, Of course, they want to reduce the likelihood. Which of the following is the most effective control? So you have to put a control in there, which will reduce the likelihood of risk. The choices that you have: encrypt all databases at rest, purchase cyber insurance to cover potential losses, implement segregation of duties, access controls, and monitoring, conduct annual security awareness training. Now, if you look at the question carefully, right, it looks like there is a high risk of insider data theft. Now, there is likelihood of somebody alone doing that job, right? What if one person cannot do it? Maybe you need to have like 5 different individuals to do the same job, right? So if you look at it from that perspective, it looks like C is the right answer here. Implementing segregation of duties, access control, and monitoring would be the right choice in there, right? Do not give like too much control to single individual in this case, right? List privilege, and then keep monitoring whatever he or she does, or whichever doing it, or whichever is likely doing it. And having that segregation of duties will potentially be an effective way to control the likelihood of risk. Encrypting all databases at rest, it's not going to work, is because you can find the decrypt key and get that out. Purchasing cyber insurance to cover potential losses, it's not going to help either because it's an insider one. And what insurance is going to do on that one, right? Conducting annual security awareness training. People are aware of this, but they're still doing it. So I believe C is the right choice. Now, let's talk about this one here. A global enterprise is deploying a new enterprise resource planning ERP system. So they're deploying a new software, ERP software. The board is concerned that IT risks are not consistently reported in terms of business impact. Okay, which of the following is the best way to ensure IT risk is aligned with business objectives? This question is very important, actually. Number A is about integrate IT risk reporting into enterprise governance and report using business metrics. Number 2 is about training IT staff to provide more technical details in reports. Number 3 or C is about reporting only risks that exceed IT department thresholds. And number D is about using audit findings as a sole source for IT risk reporting. So number 1, when we're integrating IT risk reporting into enterprise governance and report using business metrics, it helps us, it informs us that the risks are given in a way that does align with the business, with the strategic business objectives and decision making, for sure. Right? On the B, talks about the IT details, technical jargon. There was one question that we kind of like went through prior about, technical, that the business is not understanding it, which is not going to be that effective in this case. Now, we talk about this IT department, this single department, right? Threshold. So it's not. It'll ignore the enterprise-wide context there. And on the D, the alignment will not be there. You can find the audit. You can utilize the audit to find the source, but not for the governance alignment. It'll give you a small view or the partial view, not the full view, not the whole 360, right? So that's what it's looking for. So I think the right answer would be A, integrating IT risk reporting into enterprise governance and report using business metric is the right choice here. The next one is about a financial institution wants to identify emerging cyber risk that could impact its operations in the next 12 months. Which of the following is the most effective approach? Let's take a look at the choices that we have. Review past incident reports from the internal IT department. We want to go back to the historical records, whether or not that's going to be helpful to us or no. To identify emerging risk, cyber risk that has impact its IT operation. So you want to be proactive in this, and you are going to be more reactive if you take option A. Option B is about monitoring industry threat intelligence feeds and regulatory updates. So one of the critical thing in cybersecurity is you always need to be pretty much updated in a regular basis, because there are lots of things that gets changed in the course, right? So I think this is the right choice about the industry threat intelligence feed. MITRE ATT&CK is one of the way that you can monitor the threat there, right? So, whatever the update that's the regulatory body does, you want to take a look at that one also. Like, this is really not a regulatory one, it's a framework, but they updated the 2.0 framework, right? So those are the updates that keeps coming up, right? Maybe there are some updates in HIPAA law that was not there like 10 years ago that you have to be more familiar with. GDPR, right? It has regular updates in there, so you want to be familiar with those kind of updates that comes in there. So when you are armed with these kind of like information, right, it will definitely reduce the impact, the foreseeable impact, right? Number C is about conducting quarterly internal audits. That's fine. You can do that. But we're talking about the proactive one. It's not going to help because every 3 months or so, you're doing some audits, and audit will not help you to have that impact being low. Number D is about tracking server uptime and network performance metrics. It talks about the operational performance, but does not address any kind of foreseeable risk or the emerging risk, right? So I think the right answer here is B. Okay, the next one is about risk appetite, and let's talk about this one here. A global enterprise is planning to launch a new AI-powered customer service platform. Ooh, I'm excited about AI-powered. During the risk review, senior management expresses concern about the organization's risk appetite for emerging technologies risk, including algorithm bias and reputational impact. As the risk professional, what is the best way to address this concern? Now, you are the risk professional. You have to address this concern. The management have about the risk appetite, about the company's risk appetite for the emerging technology. Because AI could have that bias in there, right? Number A is about conducting a detailed technical assessment of AI algorithm only. AI algorithm only. Okay. Align emerging technology risk with the organizational defined risk appetite and tolerance level is answer B. C is about transferring all AI-related risks to a technology vendor. D is about ignoring potential reputational risks since they're all difficult to quantify. You never wanted to have the D as the choice here, right? If it's difficult to quantify, you want to ignore the reputation here. That's not going to happen. A is about the technical assessment, which is very, very important. But having that technical assessment, how come it's going to address the risk appetite, the alignment, right? Number B is aligning emerging technology risks with the organizational defined risk appetite and tolerance level. This is the right choice, I believe, because it ensures that the management is able to understand which risk that we're going to accept, which risk that we want to mitigate, which risk that we want to escalate, and which risk that we want to transfer, right? C is about transferring all risks. There is always going to be some kind of risk that will remain even if you transfer it, so it's not that practical or feasible. Number D is about ignoring potential reputational. This is very, very dangerous. I mentioned that before, and you never want to have this at all. So the right answer is B. All right, let's move on to the next one. So this is about a bank wants to implement a new mobile banking application. The IT risk team conducts a quantitative risk analysis to determine potential financial impact if sensitive customer data is compromised. Which of the following approaches best represents a quantitative assessment? So you have two. One is quantitative in a dollar amount or some kind of numbers in there. And you have qualitative, which is high, medium, low, and all those kind of things that we talked about earlier. So always think about that from that perspective, right? It's a quantity. It's a quantity. All right. So the A is about ranking the risk as high, medium, or low based on likelihood and impact. I think that's quantitative, not... Well, let's talk about this one. Okay, so the first one is rank the risk as high, medium, or low based on likelihood and impact. Whenever you see high, medium, or low, it's a qualitative, right? So that's not the right choice. Second one is about calculating the potential monetary loss using metrics such as annualized loss expectancy, or ALE. This looks more promising is because you have a dollar value in there. The third one is about conducting workshop with stakeholders to discuss possible outcomes. You can do that for the input that you want to achieve, but you cannot come up with some dollar value or there's no numeric assessment in there. So based on that, this is a wrong answer. The D is about, or the choice, the final one, D, is about reviewing industry news and reports for emerging threats. Okay, you can do that, but it's very informative when you do that. You keep that information, but there is no numeric value to it, right? So that's not what we're looking for. So the right answer is B, calculate the potential monetary loss using metrics such as analyze loss expectancy. Now, the next one is about operational risk here. A healthcare provider identifies a risk that a critical patient monitoring system could fail due to outdated software. So you have a software that's outdated and there is a criticality that the system could fail. The potential impact includes the patient safety and regulatory penalties. So there is a fine associated with it, and also the information is getting leaked. Management decides to replace the system entirely to eliminate the risk. Okay. Which risk response strategy does this represent? Now, the choice here, the choices that we have is either you want to accept, transfer, mitigate, or avoid. Now, we're talking about implementing the new system. We want to get rid of the outdated system. We want to implement the entirely new system, right? So number A is about the acceptance. Acceptance is acknowledging the risk without further action. You have a risk, I accept that risk, I want to move on, right? I think that's the right choice here. B is about transferring it. You're building a new system, so you're definitely not transferring it. Wrong answer. Mitigation. Mitigation is possible if you are going to work on an existing system and mitigate the potential risk, right? So when you're mitigating it, chances are the system should not fail, even having that outdated software. I've seen in the industry they have like 20 years old outdated software. They're still utilizing it, and it keeps their lights on. I mean, I don't know how, but you know, that's different. That's some other time topic. So another choice here is avoidance. So I think avoidance is the right choice here, is because the existing system, you are avoiding it. You are getting rid of it. You do not want to talk about that anymore. So it's gone. It's eliminating the risk entirely by stopping or replacing that particular system, right? So the replacement of the old system to a new system is about avoiding. So I believe the right choice here is D. All right, let's move on to the next one here. A multinational company wants to monitor IT risk exposure in real time to detect potential threats before they materialize. Management asks you to implement predictive risk metrics. Which of the following is the best choice? Predictive risk metrics. Number A is about conducting annual audits and generating summary reports. Do you think that's the right choice? when you are conducting the annual audits, you're going back, right? Based on what you dig through it, you're producing a report and giving it to them, right? So this is not something that can be seen as predictive. Now, B is about establishing key risk indicators, KRIs, that track trends and thresholds. Now, KRI is designed, or KRIs are designed to predict potential risk events and utilize that as warning signals, which will allow the management to take actions before that risk could do some harm, right? So we're talking about the predictive risk matrix here, and I think this is the right choice, but just leave it as is for now. Let's move on to other two. Track historical incident reports to identify past failures. Okay, again, you're going to in the past, digging through these historical incident reports. You're just identifying your failures there, right? There is nothing about predictive risk matrix that you can get out from there. Benchmark IT controls against risk standards. Benchmarking is useful for the context, but not for the real-time risk monitoring, right? So I believe the right answer here is B, to establish key risk indicators that track trends and thresholds. All right, thank you. That's the end of this presentation. I really appreciate your time today. And please do help me by giving your valuable input to this presentation. And if you have any friends or anybody who is preparing for the test, please do let them know about some of the questions that are out there. It's just not, so my intention is not just putting the question out there and then answering it in a way, but trying to figure out, like, there are some words, some kind of like thing that you need to understand it for you to move forward, to get that knowledge out there. That's what I'm trying to do. So if you find this useful, please do like it, share it, comment it, and subscribe to it as well. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Until next time, have a great day. Bye-bye.